All right, item 10B, receive alternatives and provide direction to staff regarding the citywide current street sweeping program and related parking restrictions.
Good evening, Mayor, honorable council members. The City Council directed staff to review current street sweeping operations and related parking enforcement initiated by a resident concerned about why certain streets were subject to parking enforcement and why others were not. City Council requested that staff review if the current policy and related parking enforcement were still applicable today, and then meet with the Service Infrastructure Subcommittee to discuss alternatives. Staff discussed alternatives with the subcommittee in addition to discussing that street sweeping is required under the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System Permit, MPDES permit. This is a county-wide permit that requires a need to remove debris and pollutants from the storm runoff before it drains to the bay. This permit is also part of a broader requirement that San Bruno, as well as other agencies, develop a trash load reduction plan with a goal of 40% by 2014. Public Services Director Klara Fabry is here to discuss the additional alternatives in more detail.
Considering the objectives of the street sweeping programs, 4 alternatives were developed for the infrastructure subcommittee and your consideration. The first alternative is to leave the parking restriction as it is right now. This alternative would not address the concern raised by the residents, and also will not require any additional cost to implement. Alternative 2 would extend the restriction citywide. This alternative would enable the city to enhance our effectiveness for the street sweeping, and also would further the city to achieve our trash reduction goal of 40% by 2014. This alternative would require additional resources by the police department, 2 person, 2.5 FTEs. Also, this alternative would require one additional investment of between $800,000 to $1.2 million to install parking restriction site citywide. The third alternative would be to extend the parking restriction to very specific location west of El Camino, where the streets are more narrow and lined with trees, and also is more congested by parked cars. This would be between El Camino to the east and Hazel and Cypress to the west, and Genevan to the north, and Santa Lucia to the south. This alternative would require, this alternative also would improve our street cleaning program, would enhance our street cleaning program, and also would further our objective to meet the trash load reduction. This alternative would require between $70,000, $90,000 investment for the cost of parking restriction signs. Based on police department assessment, they would be able to to support this program with existing resources what they have. The fourth alternative, which is very responsive to the concern raised by the residents on the impact of the parking restriction on them, would modify the existing street sweeping program and would delay the start of the street sweeping and the parking restriction in the residential area to 9 o'clock, and then in the same time would increase the frequency of street sweeping in the industrial and commercial area, achieving the goal of enhancing our street sweeping program and also to further the city in achieving our goal of trash load reduction. This alternative would require a around $24,000 investment to modify the existing parking restriction size with changing the time, starting time in the residential area from the existing 8 o'clock to the proposed 9 o'clock. Gino Quinn, who developed actually this program, and the stormwater and street service manager is here, and he will be able to provide, he did the hard work, and he will be able to provide you with any detailed answer on the proposed changes to this program and to these alternatives. I am available, and Gino is available, and Tami is available for any additional question what you might have.
Okay. Any questions of staff? Irene?
I appreciate the work that was involved. Thank you. Is there a reason that we can't do 3 and 4? I mean, it seems logical to change the hours to accommodate people's work schedule and the things that we have learned from them about what makes it difficult, and extend the streets that we do sweep. I realize there's a cost involved, but we are going to have to step up what we do to comply with state laws. So was there thought in doing both, or?
And certainly here I would defer to the infrastructure subcommittee to share their discussion with you also. Was my understanding that the context how this was, all of these alternatives were discussed even with the subcommittee, you can use a phased-in approach that right now is in a very short time, alternative 4 could be implemented, and then alternative 3 can be, will take some time until public outreach, more extensive public outreach will be implemented for implementation of number 3, and also maybe some pilot project before the full implementation of alternative 3 could be considered. And then that would be the next step for the program, and was also discussed by the subcommittee as a long-term goal then to implement number 2 to extend citywide. That basically you can consider this as a step phased in kind of program modification. It's really everything is possible, is up to your decision and opinion at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Ken?
I just want to add that what we're clear on is that we have a concern with making sure we clean the streets in the flat areas. Okay, and if we don't have parking restrictions, then that street sweeper will basically just clean the middle of the street. Now, there's always been a concern, as long as I've lived in this city, on why doesn't the west side have streets, have parking restrictions. And so now that we have clarified the reasons why it has been implemented on the east side, that staff has found that we have similar situations on the west side. And that was presented to the subcommittee, and there's that, I guess, 8 square block area on the southwest side of the city. Now that I don't have, restricted parking, and I feel for the people, the residents that live on the east side, because, they have to be aware of what's going on, or else they're going to get ticketed. I mean, 400 to 500 citations per month is a lot of citations for our residents, and it's something that has, if we're going to have restrictions, we have to have that. So our concern is that even though we have found out that the west side has a needed area for street sweeping, we need to implement some major education to those residents, and let them know, or else they're all going to get ticketed, because I think it has to evolve into a mindset of, okay, this is the day, just like when you put your garbage out, that you have, that this is when you have to move your car, or you have to make sure your car isn't on the street. So, but I think we let the cat out of the bag. This is now. It is, there is a reason for us to put it on the west side. So there are no more arguments from the east side residents saying, why isn't it on the west side? Well, now we've justified it. So I believe it was our decision that, we should pursue that.
Correct.
And what time, and for how much money, and how we're going to budget it.
Any residents?
And I wanted to also say that we were tasked with trying to with making a decision tonight, but we wanted to hold off because we wanted to hear from the residents. We wanted to get it out there, and let the firestorm happen. It's like, let everyone criticize us or compliment us on what we're pursuing.
Good. Well, just go to the podium and give us your name and your street.
My name is Sarah Glasscock, and I live on North San Anselmo. I think when I first brought this to the council, my biggest concern was that living on the street that I live on, we're subject to tickets. And something that I don't see mentioned up there is that there, I believe, and I could be wrong about this, is that there's a 72-hour limit to parking citywide, meaning that if you have a trailer or a boat or a vehicle and you have it parked on your street and you live on Madison Avenue, you can leave your trailer parked out there for a year and not get ticketed. And if my husband's working on his truck and it's parked longer than the people that come by and ticket for street sweeping, our tires get marked up and we have to move our vehicle, or it gets towed. They'll actually tow vehicles off of the streets that are in my neighborhood. And the neighborhoods that are west of El Camino, they're not subject to that same 72-hour ordinance. And I like the idea about street sweeping, and I'm jumping subjects here. I like the idea about street sweeping because then there's the rationale of, yes, our streets are narrow on the east side, and those streets that are west of El Camino, they're also narrow. And so that makes sense. There's like a cohesive policy as far as that goes. The streets aren't getting cleaned in the area by San Bruno Park. And option 3 and especially option 4, I think are good ideas, as you had mentioned. But again, the whole 72-hour ordinance is not, I don't know if that's even part of the same argument. It's not. Okay. I guess that's all I have then.
I think we have two situations here. One is the street sweeping, and it was interesting to read the staff report that was started 30 years ago, and why. And obviously, people now have larger families and a lot more cars, and so it probably wasn't as big of an issue then. The other issue, of course, and I'll let the city manager address it in more detail, is the 72-hour parking restriction. It does exist. And unfortunately, it's an enforcement issue, but we do have a lot of people that use that, have multiple cars on the, obviously right near St. Roberts is a really good example.
Right.
They park for 71 hours and they move their car and they park again. And it's a really tough situation to try to enforce. And I know the police department is on a lot of this, but it's a situation that, and I believe it's a, if I'm not mistaken, a Department of Motor Vehicles situation there too. But Connie, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I'll address that a little bit more completely. The 72-hour ordinance is in effect, and it is enforced, and I would say it's enforced equitably citywide. The mayor is absolutely correct that unfortunately there are a number of instances where our police department is effectively chasing those violations because we are required to post a notice of in advance of towing the vehicle under the 72-hour ordinance. So it gets to be a little bit of a if somebody is astute, shall we say, and is watching carefully. Sometimes it can be difficult to, if the car is just moved, it could stay for another 72 hours. The only difference between the west side and the east side in the city related to parking is, in residential areas, is the parking restriction related to street sweeping. So in effect, what happens is that in those street sweeping restriction areas on the east side of town, there is effectively a limiting feature to the 72-hour ordinance. In other words, if the 72 hours that a vehicle would otherwise be parked overlaps with the street sweeping restriction, it is possible that your vehicle could not stand for the full 72 hours. But that's not because the 72-hour restriction is different. It's because of the parking restriction for street sweeping. So the two are different, and the 72-hour ordinance is enforced equally on both sides of town.
Okay. Anyone else from the public? All right. Discussion or action? Rico?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With the Vice Mayor, I was on the subcommittee as well, and I'm one of those people on the east side that Ken feels sympathy for, who does move. We deal with moving the cars. You get very, very close knit neighbors when you start knocking on each other's door right before 8 o'clock to remind them if they've forgotten, overslept, or running a little late. I do feel that option 4 was something we brought up because I think it has been hard on those folks that are working or trying to juggle their day, get the kids out, and what have you. And I think that extra hour does value and benefit them. And obviously, the objective of, I believe, of the city back 30 years ago was not to penalize, but to try to keep the streets clean of the vegetation and the debris. Not only because it goes into the sewer, which is critical for what we have to focus on, but it's also as far as the flooding. When the drain gets clogged and all of a sudden the drainage, and then we have the flooding, which is another issue. It was interesting when we were in the subcommittee about how much when you say you can pick up on the street when it is vacant of all cars versus going down the center. And the numbers that were given by Gino were staggering. So it works, it's proven, and statistical data backs that up, that a clear street gets to be a clean street, and it prevents those things that, at least I believe, I'll speak from my street that I live on, would be affected if we did not have it. That was why I think we were suggesting going forward with option 4 for now. Option 3, though there is legitimacy in other areas that were identified in the staff report, it was also about reaching out and communicating, because obviously just to take action here and not say anything is not fair to others as well. You know, I've lived on the east and the west, and I know I have neighbors that believe it's a penalty, even in its perception, but they wouldn't ever want to see the street sweeping cease because of its value and its benefit. So I believe that the street sweeping needs to stay on the east side. if it wants to be looked at in that area of option 3. And eventually, we may find ourselves where it is required and mandated throughout this town to reach those levels that were indicated in the staff report. So that's kind of in a summary my thoughts.
And just to add on option 4, by extending that time 1 hour, it means that the commercial and industrial areas will now get street sweep every week instead of twice a month. So there is an added benefit there because the street sweeper now won't be in the residential area as early, but will be able to go through the commercial area before going into residential.
Also, I might add was our plan included in alternative 4 that the parking lots parallel to San Mateo, they are cleaned once a week right now. Under this alternative, would be possible for us to clean those twice a week instead of once a week. And the city received reasonably high number of complaints about the cleanness of those.
Yeah. Any other discussion or action? Michael?
Through the chair, yeah, I was wondering, when the subcommittee was discussing this, was there any, is there an indication that the streets are basically clear during working hours, 9 to 5? Is that where the 9 o'clock came from? I'm assuming that the thought process was that by 9 o'clock the cars would be off the street anyway. But is there, is that really the case? Do the streets really clear out a little bit during the day? Or are people taking public transit and leaving their cars there?
I'll speak for where I live. I believe the 8 o'clock is hard for residents trying to. I'm just telling you my street, and the streets around me is just. There is a mad dash at times at 8 o'clock. You know, if by chance, you know, I'm not saying at 8:05 you get a ticket, but I think it was the extra hour was for the fact of people are usually gone with the kids to school, gone to work, begun their day. It gives them that latitude and a little bit of grace period in which to, if something should be running behind schedule, for example, that they're not having to run out to the street, somehow try to find a spot, get back into the house, and then try to get the things back. And now they might be not just across the street, but around the corner down the street, because that's all there is of parking. That is the 9 o'clock. On my area, I will say, when I go around, minimally, I believe, yes, on the street sweeping days, the cars are moved, but it's also because there's probably got some good neighbors that look out for each other. Is what I've had. You too? You too? Okay.
Yeah, I'll come out at, no, I'm not using the microphone, but I'll come out at 8:10, and he's just passing by with the ticket, and I leave at 8:15. It's like that extra bit of time. And you've got kids in school, got a kid at Parkside. It just works out that way.
Okay. Okay, good. Anything else? Any action? Okay. Well,
I mean, I was hoping,
direction.
it's all on you. I was hoping for more public comment, but I do believe that we should go forward with option 4, and that was our recommendation at the subcommittee level. Is we should probably get into some notification if we're, if this council really wants to go into, option 3 over on the west side. But if we go forward with option 4, I think it'll solve some issues, and also again the bonus is that the commercial area does get cleaned more often. So I'll make that motion that we approve alternative 4, modify the street sweeping program to enhance the route schedules, cleaning frequency, and sweeping times.
Second.
Motion second. Any question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, staff has direction.
Through the chair.
Irene?
As we're working up the budget for the following year, can we ask that it be, that street sweeping for the west side be looked at and see how much we can do it? I live on one of the streets that is in red here, and I would be really excited to have my street cleaned and have the cars, I mean, I know it's clean, but have the cars move so it could really be cleaned. So we can do that.
Okay. And one more thing, how long will it take to implement this?
To implement Alternative 4 will be possible for us to do in 2 months from now, and Alternative 3 will be assessed at the time how you suggested during the budget process, how long it takes to implement Alternative 3.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for bringing it to our attention. So a lot of times, you know, it takes the input of the public to make some suggestions that aren't bad for everybody. You know, this is a good thing. Like I said, this was set up 30 years ago, probably in a totally different environment, and when in fact Irene can tell you when avenues were flooding and stuff like that. So we made a big improvement there with drainage and stuff, and this is part of it too. So thank you very much.
Just don't work on the car, on the truck in the street.